Hello there. And another one bites the dust. A Hezbollah battalion commander overseeing the firing of rockets from Lebanon into Israel from multiple locations has been eliminated, claims the IDF. Hussein Mohammed Awada was responsible for carrying out terror attacks against the state of Israel from a number of villages in the Bint Jabal area in southern Lebanon, says the IDF. And they also claim that 45 Hezbollah terrorists had been killed over the last 24 hours in successful airstrikes after 150 weapons depots, rocket launchers and buildings used for military purposes had been targeted. Now, there had been worries that the US might end up pulling military supplies to the IDF unless Israel significantly raised the amount of aid it lets through into the Gaza Strip. Or more accurately, allows more aid into Gaza to allow Hamas terrorists to commandeer it. Something that would have given great comfort to Iran and its Hamas, Hezbollah and Houthi puppets. But it is now being reported that the Biden administration has absolutely no intention of doing so. It seems that Israel will remain within a tight circle of very few allies that would not be cut off from US military support. While Israel ups its operations in southeast Lebanon, issuing instructions for people to leave an area as they are living near facilities and interests that belong to Hezbollah, which will be targeted by defence forces in the very near future. While Hezbollah claims it successfully attacked 2 Israeli tanks with guided missiles. Now Germany has got into the action with one of its corvettes, the Ludwigshafen am Rhein, intercepting and neutralising a drone off the coast of Lebanon today, sustaining no damage to the ship or crew. But the reports I've seen make it unclear which side the drone belonged to. The corvette is part of the UN peacekeeping mission between Lebanon and Israel after all. And while all this goes on, according to the Halsh Human Rights News Agency, some 300 Afghan migrants trying to enter Iran were targeted and killed by Iranian border guards. I wonder if the pro-Palestine mob forever marching in London will give them a second's thought as they chant from the river to the sea. And Iran also wants to deport 2 million refugees by March next year. Wonder where they'll all be heading. Anyway, Israel continues its own actions of self-defence and survival. So, Richard, what do you think?
Yes, I think Israel is currently up against it, to be honest with you. I've been going through some of the comments on the newspapers and on Twitter and on articles on various papers. I mean, but it's quite funny. I have to just jump straight in here. You see, it's all about perception. Okay, so here we are talking about the terrible position that Israel finds itself in right now, in almost like a no-win situation with the international community. And yet we have beloved Owen Jones, lovely little chap he is. Yes, lovely chap. And he's and he's now saying that the assault on northern Gaza, Israel has taken a new taking this deprived campaign to a new depths, and you see him mentioning genocide here. I mean, this is to completely misunderstand the situation, or is it deliberate? I don't know, because you have commentators like that on the left saying that this is a genocidal attacks taking place by Israel when it's fighting for its life. I mean, right now it's just managed to secure munitions for its Iron Dome. Thank goodness. How much they've just conceded in order to do that is another matter. But I'm reading here that also the left, sorry, going back to my point with Owen Jones, the left here are quite united. I mean, it's like Starmer right now. I'm just reading the Jewish Chronicle, and it says that Starmer says government looking at sanctioning extremist Israeli ministers. Right, okay. What does that tell you about the demographic that he is pandering to in this? Or does he actually hold these sort of views towards the Israeli government? It's very very nuanced. I
Yeah,
mean,
let's be
yeah.
fair about it. Some of those ministers he's talking about do actually talk about genocide. They do. They're the
Mm.
types, the extreme ones who've somehow been elected, who say that we want to see, Gaza leveled and all this sort of thing. There are some that do say things like that. So
There's a lot of angry
yeah,
talk going on, though. Yeah, there's a lot of angry talk going on. I mean, this is, do you sanction? Do you go behind the scenes and say, listen, that was a little bit out of, you shouldn't have quite said that, but officially, on an official basis, what sort of message does this send out to Lebanon?
I
And
agree. I
what,
mean, in the heat of war, when you're fighting for survival, what do you actually say? I mean, I would sort of hark back to the wars we've ever been involved in as the UK defending itself. What sort of things were said about the opposition throughout the last century during those conflicts? What did we actually say about the enemy? What did we wish upon them every single day?
yes, I mean, it's reading too much into rhetoric during wartime is very, very difficult because you have
Yeah,
to remember this is wartime. I mean, people
yeah,
say things in haste. People said things in haste in the riots here. People said things
yeah,
and they've regretted it. We all say stupid things, but
yeah,
the
continually.
wider message, yeah, but the wider message though that Starmer is now sending out to the international community and and to Israel's enemies, it's almost it's almost opportunistic as far as I'm concerned from Starmer. I don't know. I find it quite
Yeah, who
yeah
is he pandering to?
yeah.
Yeah, that is a very big question. We all know who Angela Rayner was pandering to just before the last election. I wonder if the two are the same.
Yeah, I'm just so
Yeah,
looking
so
through some.
things are getting widening out in the Israel situation in the Middle East. Is there going to be an end to it? This is ideological. One side, I'm afraid, it looks like, is going to actually have to win. Um, the Hamas declaration makes it clear they're not interested really in a two-state solution, other than as a springboard to a one-state solution, a one Islamic state solution, and that's it. From the river to the sea, that's what that's all about. And Israel doesn't want to cede any ground. It's one or the other. And if you do end up splitting Israel and giving half to the Palestinians and calling it Palestine, what do you do in between them? You'd have to have a North-South Korea maximum militarized zone down the middle. You'd have to have permanent UN troops, tanks, and all the rest of it. You'd have to have tunnel detecting equipment to make sure one side wasn't digging under to get at the other. That's how bad it really is. And I can't see a way through. Our politicians can't see a way through. The only one actually was Trump with the Abraham Accords. At least he got somewhere with all of the those intractable
Well,
problems over there.
yes, I just did read earlier that the uh, Iranian foreign minister is
Right.
currently on a charm offensive
Oh yeah.
around the Middle East with Arab nations, and
Right.
I wonder how that will stack, how that will go down in light of the Abraham Accords. Um,
Yeah.
Apparently, Israel has not been doing so much of a charm offensive itself. I think it feels potential. I mean, I'm sure Israel right now is glad that. I mean, Jordan, I believe, has assisted Israel
Yeah.
in the attacks by
Yeah.
shooting by was it from the Iranian missile strikes? It
Yeah.
actually helped
Anything
defend.
the missiles that overflew its territory, they
Yeah.
rightfully shot down. I mean, unless you
Yes.
want to join in the war and give Iran permission to fire missiles through your airspace, then you have every right to shoot them down because you don't know where they're really going, do you?
No, absolutely not. The level of trust between Iran and other nations in the Middle East is very low, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, especially
but
as well over half the Iranian population doesn't want that particular regime anyway.
oh yeah, I mean, way over half. I mean,
Yeah.
I know a lot of Iranians, obviously, and I find that the mood music coming from the Iranian people is entirely different to how the left would paint the mood music of the Iranian people. And the
Yeah.
same applies for other people living in the Middle East. The amount of support within the Middle East for Israel is quite remarkable. But it's not something that's talked about because it doesn't suit the liberal left-wing
And
narrative.
I have to wonder how many of the ordinary Lebanese people actually appreciate Hezbollah being thrust upon them and building missile bases all over the place and tunnels. I mean, wouldn't that money and effort be better spent on just making Lebanon a better place to live on its own in quiet sort of neighborliness with people like Israel? Don't you think?
Yes, but you also have to look at the fact that within Israel, just a slight little deviation here. My point here is you look at Gaza and the money that's going towards the same. I mean, Hezbollah is funded obviously by Iran, but you have to realize that money that was sent to Gaza has been spent on creating these bunker systems, these tunnel systems, and on weapons to attack Israel. When the amount of aid that had actually gone to Gaza, I believe it was more than that of Germany after the Second World War.
Yeah, it's been billions.
Yeah, so Gaza could have been in an incredible position right now. It could have been, what do people say? It could have been the Shanghai, is it, or Singapore?
Or whatever.
Singapore of the Middle East. Yeah, and that's gone. That opportunity has been removed by Hamas, and that's all there is to it.
That's the way I view it as well. And
Yes.
let's give this a little bit of thought. You do know that every Israeli home built after and business premises built after about the mid 1990s, I think, has to have an escape room, a secure escape room that's sort of bomb-proof and bulletproof for people to hide in during attacks. And that's what they've had to put up with. Now, Hamas went to war with Israel. They got loads of tunnels. Who's in them? The children or the fighters?
But this goes back to my point about Keir Starmer describing certain ministers in Israel as extremists. You can see how, as I said, hot heads can arise and words can be said and overreaction can take place.
Yeah.
But a good minister and politician and statesman would understand this and would take that into account. Starmer is not. I feel he's been very opportunistic in his condemnation, his instant condemnation.
Possibly.
Have a word in the back rooms. That's what you do. Say, carry on like this, and there will be repercussions. However, that's not what's happened. This has been put out into the public, and what does that? As I said, this is a very dangerous message that's been sent out. Anything, right? I know it sounds awful. It's like, oh, you can't criticize Israel. Yes, you can. You can criticize Israel if it steps out of line, but you do it in a certain way, and you do it at a certain time. There are so many subtleties and nuances to international diplomacy, and it feels like we've got somebody at the helm of this country who doesn't really understand this and is just pushing forward.
He's ably assisted. He's ably assisted there by his foreign secretary, David Lammy, isn't he?
Yeah. Well, that's my point. There is any little tiny bit of munition towards bringing Israel down, and is going to be used, I believe, by I'm not saying David Lammy and by Keir Starmer, but or maybe I'm not. No, I'm not.
Yeah.
By people who have a very different view of Israel and the Gaza situation. We know what David Lammy's view on that is.
Well, at the end of the day, the UK government should be approaching the Middle East problem just like it should do with every other problem. What is best in our national interest? Now, the last thing you want is I would say, is Israel wiped off the map, because that country does provide us with a lot of intelligence and springboard sort of potential in the region. It would be stupid for us to just throw it away like we did the Chagos Islands. But and I keep coming back to them, it just shows a complete sign of weakness. We need to show strength. and we need to support our allies that do help us. Israel isn't
Yeah,
perfect, nor is the UK. Iran is
yeah,
far
absolutely.
from perfect, or the Iranian regime is.
But if you remove Israel from the equation from the Middle East and it's standing as a strong man in the region, what are we in the West left with? Let's be very selfish about this. Everyone else has
Yeah,
been selfish. Let's be selfish. Let's think of this in a very selfish, with a very selfish perspective. Remove Israel. What happens next? What happens instantly to its neighbors?
yeah,
You can see that there would be an incredible rise of fundamentalism throughout
yes,
the Middle East, in
yeah,
Lebanon and in Syria, in Egypt. Those things would just explode completely,
yeah.
and we would all be living with the repercussions of that. And
And
it'll go back to
our human rights laws will ensure that we cannot keep it out, not keep it out.
absolutely, yeah,
So, what is in our interests? And I would say support. My view is support Israel. I don't think there's another way. And I think we should be supporting Israel if they want to go against Iran, because that way at least we get a chance of regime change there. If regime change happened in Iran, there'd be
oh,
a massive change there.
but it's what the Iranian people have been
Yeah.
want, and it's what
Yes.
they've been begging the international community for assistance
Yeah.
with, to help them with regime change. Uh,
Yeah.
I can tell you now, there's some very brave people in Iran right now who have been standing up to the regime, and yeah, I know one or two of them, and
Yeah.
yeah, in particular the women who have led a sort of soft revolution in Iran for quite a few years now.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can actually follow on Facebook a very interesting page called I'm not sure if it's still going, but it used to be called My Stealthy Freedom, and
Right.
that
Yeah.
will give you a good idea where you have women who'll be removing their coverings just to, yeah, very
It's
sad.
quite funny though, isn't it? From our point of view, running this channel, we've been sort of taking on what Iranian quiet revolutionaries do. They use subtle language, they use subtle gestures and subtle sort of expressions to put across what they really think while they say something else.
Yes,
It's like the arm intervention from a few years ago and talking
yes,
about a certain demographic. You just have to be very careful with your language, but you can still get the message across. And there's a
yes, of
lot of
course.
that going on in Iran, isn't there?
Well, in particular with Iranian cinema, there's one Iranian filmmaker. I believe he still makes films, but he's under house arrest. I'm not so sure if he's still alive now. I believe he is,
Yeah.
but I might be wrong. You'll see a lot of that going on in Iran. It's all very subtle, very clever, very, very clever people. Maybe I'm slightly biased because I do have some Iranian heritage myself in me, but yeah, there,
Yeah.
there, there are good people who have been completely downtrodden. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, the people from some of the people who are now entering the country from Iran, who are entering Britain from Iran, are not necessarily the best of the best.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
every
did go
every
to
country.
London and I met several, quite a few people from Iran just in Trafalgar Square. And
Mhm.
there were definitely two or three or even four different factions. There were those for the regime, those against the regime, but for other fundamentalists. The whole thing was riven with their conflict, and it was playing out in Trafalgar Square, albeit peacefully. Although there were some sort of stern words from one to the other and some cold, hard looks and various people wandering around, sort of keeping an eye on what I was doing, because
Yes,
they obviously thought I was someone there. I was just watching, But you
but you
felt
will
it
find,
just made you feel uncomfortable.
yeah, you will find an over-representation of the pro-regime
Yeah,
lot in London at the moment. They're being paid to turn up. They're
yeah,
being promoted within, uh, yes,
yeah.
within certain movements. Yeah,
So there you go.
that's the way it goes. Yeah.
Anyway, I
Anyway,
think
mate. Yeah,
yeah.
I think we've. I've got another thing I've got to get on with as well. I want to get on
Oh
with
right,
some.
okay, yeah, yeah. Well, I've got lunch.
So,
My stomach is beginning to sort of say,
well, that's the other thing
yeah.
I've got to get on with.
You like your lunch, don't you, mate? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was up early, so I'm having an early lunch and then
Yeah.
early to bed. There we go. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, then. Well, thanks everybody for watching. Well, next time we'll have to go through the comments, but I think we're a bit short for time at the moment. So
Yes.
thank you very much for watching, and it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him. From him. Yeah.